All right, everybody, we'll get started here in just a second. Alrighty, everybody, we are going to get started as it's just at the top of the hour. Thanks everyone for joining us. My name is Sammy Fogarino. I am the Senior Events Manager here at Consensus, and I'm going to be your moderator for today's session. This webinar is presented by Consensus. Consensus is leading the world into the new era of demo automation. Our platform gets your buyers what they need when they need it. It then multiplies your revenue team's impacts with unique insights on those buyers. As a result, you'll see faster close times, larger deals, and higher close rates. You can learn more at goconsensus.com. We're very excited to be gearing up for the biggest event in pre-sales and buyer enablement, DemoFest 2024. This event is virtual, presented to you from anywhere in the world. It's 3 days, May 21st through 23rd. You can register at the link I'm going to post in the chat to join us. Chad and some other folks from the 2Win team will be joining us there. So we're really excited. Make sure you register to secure your spot. We encourage you to participate in today's webinar. Our speaker will answer any questions at the close of the event, but you're welcome to post your questions at any time through the Q&A box on the right side of your console. If at any time you're having technical difficulties, press the help button on the right side of your screen. And now I would like to introduce our speaker. Chad Wilson is the Vice President of Curriculum at 2Win, the company behind Demo2Win, which you may be familiar with. He has over 20 plus years of experience as a senior sales leader and partners with C-level leaders to build high-performing teams that consistently overachieve revenue targets with a laser focus on customer experience. Chad actually presented this session at our DemoFest X West Coast event in February, and it had great reviews from all of the attendees, and we wanted to be able to share the session with a broader audience. So thank you, Chad, for being here. I'm going to go ahead and turn the rest of the time over to you.
Sounds great. Thank you so much, Sammy. Team, it is great to spend some time with you this morning or afternoon, depending on where you're joining us. My intent in this session is to provide some really practical tips that you can implement immediately, along with some resourcing that you can take with you if you're interested in going a little bit deeper. So knowing that this is largely a broadcast opportunity, I want to be as helpful for you as possible, as interactive as possible. So if you have questions throughout the session, as Sammy mentioned, please feel free to put those in the Q&A section. We'll pause as I go throughout this to take time for Q&A, and then we'll have a dedicated time at the end as well for that. So as we get started, what I'd like to do is I'd like to share a story about preferences. And so I think this has a lot of similarities into what we can get into as we're working with building automated demos. So my son is 16. He's a junior in high school, and he wants to go to school for engineering. And he started printing a bunch of fidgets that he would take to school with him. And he started out building these really sophisticated, kind of complex fidgets that move in a variety of different ways. He was very proud to show that he was able to design and print these things. And he took them to school, and the reaction from some of his classmates was like, that's cool, but they didn't really play with it. And so he changed the design and went with something else. Well, maybe I could simplify it and go with something different. And he tried a couple of these different iterations, and nothing really took off. They're like, that's cool, that's pretty neat, until he got to this one down here. And when he started with this smaller fidget, folks loved it, and they kept asking, hey, will you print some more of those? Will you bring those to me? And so I was asking him about this. Is like, why do you think they latched on to this one? And the reason is because they could put it in their pocket. They could play with it and fidget with it in class without the teacher knowing. And as he and I were talking about that, I was like, that's really interesting. Why did you expect that? Like you put so much time and effort to these more sophisticated fidgets, but they didn't really see the value in it. He said, ultimately, I didn't know what they wanted. And I think that as practitioners in the demo space, as we're looking at creating content to put out to the market, there's this constant struggle that we have. There's pride of ownership, pride of authorship that we have, that we want to put out the very best content that we can. But if we take a lesson from what my son learned with producing these fidgets for his friends at school, we need to think about, what does the audience want? What do buyers really expect? And we need to build based on those preferences. And this isn't a new concept. There's actually this is something that I studied in business school, gosh, 25 years ago at this point. This is part of the MBA program that I went through. We've been studying the gap between customer expectations and design expectations for a very long time. And I think we can use something like this as well. If you look at, like, when we look to build something, we have what we believe are the expectations of the buyer, and then we build the thing that we want to deliver to them. And sometimes there's a gap in our understanding. And then by the time it gets loaded into our solution and passed out to them, there may be a gap in that. And then there's a difference in their perception and their expectation. And really what we're trying to do is we're trying to close the gap between our understanding of what they want and what they actually want. And what I would say is this model is really to help service providers improve the quality of their services. What I would suggest is that may be true for some of us as we're getting started on this journey. But what I hear more often is that what we need to do is flip this, that our expectations of what we need to put out to the market may be so high that it's preventing us from getting started to begin with. Now, as we get into this, I am not suggesting that we can throw trash into the market and it's going to be okay. That's not at all what I'm saying. But what I do want to suggest is that we begin our thinking in that, in the end, an automated demo is simply a time-shifted web presentation. Now, when I said this statement in San Francisco, I watched the audience. I would say half of them nodded vigorously, and the other half's like, I don't know about that. So I want to explain kind of what I mean by this. If you think about what we're trying to do for an audience in producing an automated demo, we're putting this video out into the market. The other opportunities that a buyer would have to get this information would be to go click the Get a Demo button on the website, or to schedule a meeting with a seller so they can get a demo. And that demo largely is going to be delivered to them in a web presentation. So whatever that experience would be on your platform of choice, that's what we're replacing. We're time shifting that experience. And so when we think about how we want to do that, the measure of quality is a great web demonstration. It's not a Hollywood video. And so what I want to talk about is, how do we make good choices around this? And so there's three primary sections I want to go through. The first one is production quality. Say, okay, if it's a time-shifted web presentation, how good should we produce? How good does this need to be? What are the expectations? And is this something I should really be concerned about? So I want to talk a little bit about that. I want to talk about demo video scripting. And I've got quotes around that because it's not really scripting, but it's also not ad-libbed, not improvised. And so I want to talk about like a good balance to get started and a methodology to help improve the quality of the message in a video. And then I want to talk about organizational considerations. Some of you are likely working in a larger organization that may have multiple resources working on different facets of your strategy. And some of you may be working in a smaller team where you've got maybe one or two people that are working on this. And so I want to give you some recommendations of how you might think about structuring the organization around this, and just a couple of things to think about. After that, we'll pause for Q&A, and then I'll wrap up with some final thoughts at the end. Okay, so when we think about production quality, Consensus talks about the difference between Hollywood and YouTube, and I like this this differentiation. So I want to explore, what do you mean by that? What is that really? So if you think about YouTube, the quality on YouTube has dramatically improved over the years. If you remember back in the day, as YouTube was getting started, there's a lot of not great content on YouTube, but there was a couple of media companies that actually did an excellent job. If you look at where they've come today, you can follow some folks on YouTube that, or subscribe to their channels. They're producing content that would rival anything else that you would see on TV, but they're doing it from home. So how are they doing that? Some of them have production crews that they've got a whole business around it, but then there's some individuals that are putting out some really good quality content, but it's not $1 million budgets like Hollywood, right? And so when we look at the differences here, I want to recommend a couple of very specific things that we can do to learn from maybe those that have gone before in building some really high quality videos, and how can we get to a great quality video where we're balancing the demands of the brand that we're putting out with the velocity that we're going to need to be effective using an automated video strategy. So to kind of bring this home, let's take a look at a couple examples, right? This is a picture of me. If I had my laptop on the table in front of me in my home office, this is kind of what that looks like, right? Is this YouTube quality? I'd say no, this isn't good enough, right? You've got the light kind of flaring behind me. You've got some of the sound dampening, the ceiling behind me. It's not exactly what we're looking for, but we could adjust that to something like this. Sitting in the same place, I've just adjusted the camera angle and added some lighting. Is that YouTube quality? Yeah, I'd say so. Is that Hollywood? No, it's not good enough for Hollywood, unless we're talking Blair Witch Project or something like that, but that's a pretty good balance. So when we're looking at building something like this, there's a couple of things to think about. And I had the team put together a blog that gives you some really practical representations. So Sammy, if you get a chance in the next minute or two, let's put the link to the gear considerations blog. This gives you a couple of recommendations around audio, video, lighting, and environment. And here's what I would recommend. When we're looking to improve the quality of our videos, most of us are going to start from a baseline of your laptop, built-in camera, and built-in microphone. And if we're looking to improve, there's things that we can do to just adjust the angle of that gear, and then that we could start to buy supplemental gear for that. The first place I would start would be audio. All else being equal, a video that has pristine audio that you're able to hear, viewers will watch that and get more out of it if they can hear and understand you, and they'll give you a little bit of leeway on the video quality, so long as it's framed correctly. After that, lighting will help an okay camera look better, and then a video upgrade will definitely help to bring you some more clarity, depth of field, and professional look and feel to it as we're going through that. And then lastly, environment. Let's make sure as we're recording these videos that we're thinking about what's behind us. Is there something distracting behind us? And there's a lot of different ways to think through that, but you don't have to have a dedicated space to do this. There's a lot of different ways we could do that. And if you're interested in understanding more about how to do that, or what thoughts you might want to, or what questions you have, let us know. I'm happy to make some recommendations on that. So what difference does this make? You may be asking. Is it really worth thinking about this? And here's what I want to do. I recorded a video that walks through a couple of considerations here. And what I want to play this for you so you can see this progression. So what I do is I start with my laptop, and then I start to add on different gear so you can see the difference that it makes for the audience. So I'm going to play this for you, and so you can see for yourself the difference that is made as we go through this. And I'm actually going to double check that I shared my audio. So give me 1 second as I do that. Okay. All right, here we go.
Okay, I'm going to take you through a progression of audio and video choices. So this is a MacBook Pro 2023 inbuilt camera and microphone in a typical setup if it were sitting on a desk in front of me. Now, I could make this a little bit better by setting this on an Amazon box in front of me. Now I've got a little bit better camera angle and probably better audio since I'm right back since I'm right in front of it. The lighting isn't great, so I could turn on some supplemental lighting, and that's going to help a lot. I could further improve this if I change to a new microphone. So if I change to a Plantronics headset, you're going to notice a couple of things. One, you're going to tell the microphone is much closer. So even just the quality of the voice is going to be different. You don't get a bunch of that room noise, a little bit less background noise, but it's also going to be a little bit sterile because it's so close mic'd. Now we could move to an external webcam to improve the camera. So this gives me a better shot that's more at eye level, higher quality camera that's going to deal with the lighting a little bit better. Now I could further upgrade this by moving to another microphone.
So here is another microphone. This is a microphone that plugs into my laptop. So now I have an external microphone, external camera, and you can see that there's a pretty dramatic difference from where we started. If we were to move back to where we started with the built-in laptop camera and laptop microphone, you're going to see a pretty dramatic difference in this setup compared to, say, this setup that has external gear that's more purpose-built for the solution. All right, so you can see there's a pretty dramatic difference as we apply different gear. So you can really see the difference. What it sounds like and how you're perceived on the other end of these videos. Now, I want to pause for some Q&A. So if you have any questions, anything you want to talk about before we move to the next section, I'll give you a chance to put those in the chat while I kind of make my final point to this section. There's a couple of things that are important to know when we're creating videos, and that is that most of us experience our gear based on a web presentation. So platforms like Google Meet, Zoom, Teams, these other ones have very sophisticated audio leveling that happen behind the scenes and compression that kind of normalizes things out. So you will tell a difference between say the gear that I'm using and somebody using a laptop. You will tell a difference. But on like a Zoom meeting, that difference might be this much. But when you're going direct to a recording, that difference is dramatic because you don't have all of that back end audio leveling, compression, equalization, and that sort of thing that happens in these platforms. So it's one thing to be mindful of if you ask somebody, hey, how does this sound on your Team or your Zoom or Teams or that sort of thing, it won't sound exactly the same if you're recording direct into your laptop. So it's just important to be mindful of that. If you want to know how you sound, record yourself locally and then listen back to that with headphones or good speakers so you can really see what's going on with that. All right, I'm just going to check the chat, see if we've got anything to talk about before we move forward. Okay, so we've got an external microphone. It picks up the mouse clicks and keyboard when presenting. How do you attempt to isolate that? So there's a couple of ways to do this. So Graham, depending on what you're using in the microphone, some microphones have what's called a noise gate. So if you have the ability to adjust that, what that's going to do is it's going to kind of only record when you get to a certain level. That could help so long as you're not talking. If you're talking and it's still picking up the clicks, what I would recommend is just maybe look at moving it to a different place. So my mouse is right under my microphone, but the way I've got the microphone pointed, it picks up my voice over the mouse clicks. So you could look at different locations as a way to do that. The other thing that you can look at doing is if you can't solve for that is look at either talking with your company about adding in a bass, like music backing for that. That'll help cover up some of that, those small clicks and keyboard and that kind of stuff. Or you could look at shifting how you're recording it. So maybe doing the screen recording and the voiceover separately, if you're really concerned about that. What I would say is for most of these, it doesn't really matter unless it's super like really distracting, like you've got a mechanical keyboard that's really clicky, that might be a difference maker. But I use kind of this Logitech keyboard. It's has soft keys on it. And I got that for that very reason. So it's not as loud when I'm on web meetings. Yeah, you bet. Absolutely. If you try some of those and it doesn't get you what you want, find me on LinkedIn. We can chat about it there because it may be environmental and we can take a look at that. Okay, team. Not seeing any others. Let's move on to kind of the next section here. So,
okay, I'm going to take you through
in the next section, I want to talk about demo video scripting. So we talked about production quality, right? Managing the quality. It doesn't have to be super, super great, but with some small choices, you can make it very, very good. And that would be the recommendation. And again, we put a link to a blog with some gear recommendations in the chat for that as well. Okay, so let's talk about demo video scripting. As we think about this, I want to use an example from music. So before I got into tech, I was actually a musician. I went to school for trumpet performance. I had the unique opportunity to play Miles Davis's trumpet. This is Miles Davis. This is the trumpet he played on his album Kind of Blue. And as I was studying jazz, I learned that the way that a lot of jazz musicians learn to improvise and learn to create their own solos is actually transcribe solos from people that have gone before them. And that's part of what I did in music school is I would sit and listen to Miles Davis and others, and I would write note for note the solos they were playing and learn from them and what they were doing. And I think when we're looking at learning to create demo videos, there's a way that we can use this concept as well. And so where would we go? Transcribe, if you will, what others are doing. Well, go look at other people that are creating demo videos and find ones that you think work really well and figure out, well, what did they do? What do you like about them? What methods did they use? Did they worry about the mouse clicks and the keyboards or not? And is the video quality what you would expect? And take a look at some of that. The other place you can go is watching your colleagues deliver live demos. And that will help you kind of see, okay, well, this is what works in a live environment. This is what I would change in a video environment. So I want to talk to you about some practical things that you can look for to make these adaptations from say a live demo, whether that's in person or virtual, to a video demo. So if you've been through Demo to Win or maybe read Demonstrating to Win, we talk about this concept of tell, show, tell. And in a live environment, this is not tell them what they're going to see, show them, and tell them what you showed them. Rather, it's let's give them context about what they're about to see and why they should care in the opening tell. In the show, when we deliver the solution, let's be very focused and concise on the message that we're giving. Let's not meander into the things that we think are interesting, but let's stay, I beg your pardon, focused on the context that we gave them. And then in the closing tell, yes, summarize what we've done, but make sure you communicate the key benefit. Make sure they know what impact this is going to make for them. This type of a structure works really well in a live video, virtual or in-person format because it introduces a rhythm into the conversation where every, say, 2 to 7 minutes, we're changing topics. It introduces excellent time for communication during the opening tell to maybe talk about discovery findings that you had, or maybe ask a discovery-oriented question to get more detail before you get into the show. And in the closing tell, it provides an opportunity for conversation around the impact and what they might see if they have any questions about it before you move forward. However, this works so well in a live environment because there's a bit of a social contract. They're with you. They're in the meeting with you, and it's unlikely they're just going to leave in the middle. Like there's a bit of a social contract. They're just not going to ghost you if they showed up. That is not the same in a video environment. You send somebody a video, they get through the first 5 seconds of it and say, "This isn't for me." They're going to leave. There is no social contract to finish the video. And so whereas in a live demo, holding the benefit to the end allows you, the key benefit, the main takeaway to the end allows you to tailor that and personalize that to the audience based on the interaction that you've had. In a video, you're not going to have that opportunity. So what we talk about is a hook, a preview, and an impact. So the hook is the context and the benefit that they're going to get by employing the solution. We want to give that to them up front, because they may watch the first 10 seconds and hear this and be like, "I get it. That's all I needed." And then they're going to leave. But if we don't give them the impact, they may have their own assumptions of what they think this is. They may draw their own conclusions about what you can do, and they may be inaccurate or kind of insufficient in their understanding of that. So we want to give that to them up front so they understand that. And then we have preview, because we want to remember in most automated demos, we're not going to give them a 45-minute long video or a 20-minute long video. We're going to give them a 2-minute, 3-minute, maybe 5-minute video. And so it's a preview of the solution. It's highly prioritized around what it is we're trying to communicate. We're not saying everything we could. We're saying what we want them to understand in this nugget. And then if they watch to the end of the video, this is your opportunity to make sure they get the benefit. And so let's communicate the impact at the end. Now, when we're talking about scripting these, we talk about line 1 and line 10. So if you imagine that you're scripting a movie, a 2-3 minute movie, there's going to be an opening. That's the hook. And I would say that's a prepared line. Think of it as, I'm not going to improvise the opening to my video. I'm going to think about what it is that I really want to say here. And we call that line 1. I'm going to write it as if I would say it. The show is probably bullet points. We're probably not going to script that, but we want to know where we're going to go with that. And then line 10 is your closing statement. If they've made it to that point, this is your chance. So a prepared statement for line 10. Now, why line 10? Well, because no more than 10. It doesn't have to be 10 lines, but no more. So if you had an opening statement, 8 bullet points, and line 10, that's the absolute maximum. If you've got more than that, it's probably going to be too long. You don't have to have 10 lines. It could be line 1, line 5. That's fine, but no more than 10. And if we think about it that way, you're more likely to be concise as you go through that. So when I say a prepared statement, what I recommend is, when we're starting this process, is that you actually write what you want to say for your opening. Type it out. What would you want to say for this? What that helps is, it helps us to get it in our voice. And remember that when we're writing for a spoken part, like in a video, we're not writing for publication. And so one of the things that I see people do when they're starting with these is they'll write as if they were writing a case study, a white paper, a blog post. And that has a certain format and voice to it that tends to be more formal than you want in a video. And so we call this a performance level edit. So read it out loud, whoever the talent is going to be. If you're writing for yourself, this is usually easier. If you're writing this for someone else that's going to deliver this video, get them to read this to you. Get them to deliver the message so you can listen to it, because you may have to put it in their voice. I always joke that when I first came to 2Win, our founder, Bob Reefstall, would write for me to deliver. And the way he talks and the way I talk is totally different. He grew up in the kind of Midwest. I grew up in the South. I use a lot of contractions. I don't say do not and cannot. I say don't and can't. And it just sounds weird to me if I speak too formally. And so we had to rewrite this kind of in my voice. You'll likely have to do that as you're figuring out your voice on camera as well. So think about that performance level edit, get it in the right voice of the person that's going to be delivering the demo. Focus on prepared statements for the opening and closing. The middle can be largely improvised, and that's going to feel a little bit more natural as you go through that. So if we think about how this lays out on a timeline, this is just a crude representation of an editor, like whatever editor that you might use. What I'm looking at is, if you look at, say, line 1 is on camera. Why on camera? Because when you can look somebody in the eye and speak to them, you're more trustworthy, more credible. They're gonna have a connection with you. And if you're the one on the video and you happen to be the one doing the live demo or meeting later, there's a star power that you get that is a little bit surprising to me. It's like, oh, you were the person in the video, and you get this instant credibility that comes with that because they saw you on camera delivering that. So that's line 1. As we get into the demo, that's where we're given the screen capture. They're actually seeing the software, and then we're voicing over. Notice we're not necessarily on camera here. You don't have to be on camera. As a matter of fact, it's easier to edit this if you're not on camera during the actual demo. But when we come back to the end and we give, say, the line 10, the closing, the actual impact, back on camera to deliver that impact. So this is what this could look like. Now, notice what's missing. There's no lower thirds. There's no music. Why is that? Well, that's because if we're looking to create assets that we might use in multiple places, we may or may not want a music bed on that. We may or may not want a lower third on that. And so if maybe your title changes between the time you release the video and you're still using it later on. So having a representation of this raw video is helpful because it extends the shelf life of it. If you want to add lower thirds to it, you want to add music to it, we can always do that later. And I'm going to talk about that in the organizational considerations. But I would definitely recommend that we have kind of this raw version of it that is clean without lower thirds and music, so that it extends the usefulness, and you can use it in a variety of different places that you may want different treatments on it as you go through that. Okay, so I want to show you an example of this. So just to kind of review, line 1 on camera, it's the hook. What is this video about? What is the impact to you? After that, let's get into the show. And then we're going to finish up with the conclusion. So I want to show you an example of this. So I'll give some context here. I sat down with my son, and we had this fidget spinner idea for the opening of this thing. I sat down with him and I talked to him about how we recommend making demo videos. I spent about 15 minutes with him, kind of showing him the concepts and what we're trying to do. And then I let him go for it. And so the video that I'm going to show you, I delivered the voiceover. I figured that was unfair to try to ask him to do that with no experience in that. I didn't do anything with the screen capture. He did it all by himself, based on kind of what we talked about. And so what you're going to see is an example of a demo video that might be used in a client success context. So think about this as something that you might send out to drive adoption around a feature that you know is very sticky. It's CAD software, so computer-aided design. And we did this in a single take. Nathan did the screen recording in a single take. He gave me the file. I laid down the voiceover in a single take. And end to end, it took us about a half hour to put this together. So we did that to show you what it looks like to use these practices, to not over obsess about the quality. For me to see things, I'm like, I wish that was a little bit better, but most people probably won't notice. And that way you can kind of see what this looks like. So let's watch this together. This is a short video, single take of putting these methods into practice, and then we'll pause for some Q&A. A study by the Promotional Products Association International found that 76.2% of people who received a branded promotional product in the past 2 years could remember the product, the company, and the message behind the item.
Now that's pretty sticky. So in this video, I'm going to show you how you can easily personalize a promotional item like this 3D printed fidget spinner for an upcoming industry conference. Okay, so here we have our product, and you can see that there's a large flat surface on the front. This is going to be perfect for our personalization area. So here's what we're going to do. Let's go ahead and grab the logo that we want to put on this, and we'll go ahead and select this 2N logo. Now, I know that this logo is a little large, so we're going to have to resize this a little bit so that we can get it where we want it on the face of this. Now, this couldn't be easier. All we have to do is just drag the outline of this logo to where we want it to be on this fidget spinner. Now, once we do that, it actually creates a shape in the actual design that we can work with. So this is really easy. All we're going to do is come in and select the items of this logo that we want to work with. Now, I don't want to necessarily use every part of this logo. For instance, the trademark symbol on the top right is way too small to deal with. But I can select this, and I'm going to reduce it by 1 millimeter, and that way it's going to extrude a little bit less than everything else. And look at this, we've got a beautifully embossed logo on our fidget spinner. So we've seen how easy it is to personalize your 3D printed items and how you can have the flexibility to create raised or recessed logos quite easily. Making the effort to personalize your promotional items increases the stickiness by over 76%. If you're a professional user, you have this capability right now. It's already included in your subscription. So go ahead and give it a try today. Okay, so you can see single take video, very clear communication of what we're trying to do. And really the intent here is to drive adoption of a feature that folks may already be licensed for. All right. So I want to pause, take a look at the chat, see if we have any questions we want to answer at this point as we go through this. Okay, so Hussam says, how do I look at the camera at the same time I look at the content I have on the screen? When I look at the screen, it seems like I'm not engaged with the audience. Okay, so there's a couple of recommendations here. When you look at the audience, so you look in the lens of the camera. So, I'm not looking at my screen. Like if we had the gallery view, I'd probably want to look at you all. When I'm delivering a message, what I do is I just shift my eyes up to the camera. So if you're thinking about a demo video, line 1, line 10, your hook and your benefit at the end, we want to look at the camera for that. As we're doing the demo, if you still have the camera on, now this is probably more relevant in like a live virtual demo. It is completely okay if you're looking down at the software while you're doing a lot of the talking, kind of like I am. I'm looking more towards the bottom of the screen. But as you deliver a key benefit statement, you may just lift your eyes back to the camera, deliver that statement, and then keep going. And so some of it is familiarity and comfort in looking into the lens of the camera when you want to deliver that message. The other thing that helps is not having the camera too close to you. The closer you are to the camera, the more obvious the eye movement is. I'll give you an example. So if I were to take one step back, I'm looking in the camera now, and now I'm looking in the center of the screen. And so if you watch my eyes, because I'm further away, it's not quite as obvious as if I were closer to the camera and I look at the same place on the screen. The eye movement is more obvious because of my proximity to the camera. So that might be one thing that you look at is, could you, depending on the space and depending on your company, if you got a space for this, you can move the camera back and zoom in a little bit. That's going to create a longer distance between you and the camera and make that a little bit less obvious as you go through that. Background with minimal investment. So there's a couple ways to do this. You don't need a lot of space. I actually have a place on the other side of my desk that are some fabric panels. Now, these happen to have like mineral wool in them just because my office has a lot of echo. But before I had those, I got 1x4s from a Home Depot, and I made these little frames, and I got fabric from a fabric store and like stapled it to them. That created a very kind of generic tech looking background. And then my desk was about 2 feet in front of that. So you don't need a lot of space to do something like that. You could curate with some artwork, a bookshelf, something like that, that is neutral, but looks good.
and create a nice background for yourself. And it doesn't take that much space to do that as you go through that. Should I record the demo silent and then do voiceover, or record with audio? So here's my recommendation on this. It makes it a whole lot easier to edit if you separate the two of them. That is a learned skill. And so I've worked with some people that just prefer to talk while they're doing the demo. It's a lot to manage while you're doing that. And it limits your editing options as you go through that. So for shorter demos, like the one that we did was 2 minutes roughly. That one, Nathan did the screen recording, and then I came and laid down the voiceover. That works pretty well so long as you know what to do. We're actually putting out some free training for Consensus customers in the next 30 days, where I'm going to talk about how to record screen captures to make it easier to edit and easier to lay down a voiceover. So I'm going to kind of defer getting into the weeds on how to do that for that training, because I think that being able to do it there would be a little bit easier to do. As you watch the recording, one thing you might notice in the demo, in the recording, is there's very deliberate mouse movements. So it's not like that's one of the feedback I gave him. I was like, go to where you want to be and stop, and then click, and then go to where you want to be and stop, because that allows you to take a freeze frame of that moment and extend it to match the talk track that feels comfortable. And that gives you a really clean, precise recording as you go through that. All right. Did all attendees get a free 2-win fidget spinner? You have to come to Demo Fest next time. Most of them did, not all. I ran out. All right, let's see what else. Okay, so just some chatter through that. Good, awesome. Huge fan of OBS for recording. I did editing in iMovie. I also like Camtasia for like an all-in-one. That works really well. There's some other ones like DaVinci's good as well. So yep, good recommendations through there. Okay, I'm going to keep moving and appreciate the conversation behind the scenes here. Okay, so we've talked so far about production quality, making some good choices on that, like what difference does it make? We've given you some resources for kind of good, better, best based on your budget. You can kind of see what that looks like. Some ideas of moving a live demo to a video demo and a way to think about scripting. I want to talk about organizational considerations. What if I'm in a larger organization? How should I think about this? So there's a couple of points I want to make here. Number one is, if you remember the previous timeline I showed, it had a camera, voiceover, and screen capture. Right. So we were kind of looking at, oops, beg your pardon, just kind of these areas, right? When you get into a larger organization, you may want to put a little more polish on these videos. I recommend doing that after the raw video so you can extend the usefulness of that one. But here's some options you might have. So screen overlays. Maybe you want to highlight a certain area of the screen, or maybe you want to put a little text over an area to further explain something that might not be in the voiceover. You can always come back and add that on the screen later. Maybe you get a demo out into the wild and you're seeing that people are dropping off at a certain area, and you look at it, it's like, oh, well, that's because it's not clear what we were talking about. Maybe you go in and add a focus area in the video to make that more clear and see if that does it without redoing the whole thing. The other thing that you might do is do some lower thirds. So like these graphics, maybe you want to introduce the person on screen instead of having them introduce themselves. Because if you have somebody introduce themselves at the beginning of every video and then you put 7 of them together, it's like, well, I already know who you are. You don't want somebody introducing themselves at the beginning of every video. What you might do is use a lower third to do that in the right places. And then the last thing you might do is add a bed of music. Like doing this last, it does add a little bit of element of professionalism to it. It helps to move the edits together. So if you have audio edits, video edits, having a consistent bed makes can sometimes help with the feel of the continuity of the overall video. so that you don't have jump cuts that are obvious and some of those things. That might help add an element of continuity through it, but would recommend doing that last. That way you've got a template for consistency for the rest of the videos as they're going out throughout the rest of the organization. The other thing that I would say about this kind of came up when we were at Demo Fest, is we were talking about how do I take a recorded video that might be, say, 45 minutes long, and say it's a Zoom recording of a demo. How do I take that and then split that into smaller chunks? What do I think about? How do I make those choices? So what we would talk about in, say, Demo to Win is these are each going to become topics. They're going to be delivered using Tell, Show, Tell. So the way to break these down is to take a look at the overall demo, and you might even get a transcript of that. So I'm drawing a blank on who we use for this. I'll see if it comes back to me, but there's places you can get a transcript maybe from Zoom of the video or something else. And if you put that into a Gen AI tool and say, give me an outline of this meeting, that will give you a good starting point to see what were the key topics that we talked about and where did they happen. That might be a good place to start and say, hey, do I agree with what the AI said were the topics? But it will help you break it down into an outline. And that basically gives you an outline form of this overall meeting. And then I would take each topic and say, okay, is that topic 2 minutes? Is it 7 minutes? If it's 7 minutes, depending on the type of video I'm making and where it's going to be in the sales cycle, I might take that 7-minute video and say, okay, can I break that into 3 2-minute videos? Then I might break that down. If you've got somebody later in the sales cycle that is looking for like an FAQ video or a follow-up video, they may be very interested in just watching the 7-minute thing. So depending on how you're going to use it, that would help you decide, how small do I want to make the chunks? Early in the sales cycle, shorter, 2 minutes, 3 minutes is really what you're looking for. As you get into the sales cycle and the things get a little bit more specific, buyers are more committed. They're more likely to watch a little bit longer video, but they're probably not going to do 20 minutes, 45 minutes, that sort of thing. So that would help you make some choices around how you split those videos as you go throughout your decision making. Okay, as we near the end, I want to take a moment for Q&A. Sammy, do we have anything in the Q&A that we want to pause for?
We haven't had any questions come through Q&A. So guys, if you do have questions, make sure you post them there, because we can kind of lose things in the chat box. We want to make sure we get to all your questions, but we have not had any so far. So I did see some questions come through the chat. I'm not sure if we caught all of them.
Sure. I'll take a look through some of these real quick while we're giving folks an opportunity to put anything in the Q&A. Okay, so OBS, let's talk about that really quick. OBS, not the easiest thing to get started with, but there's a bunch of YouTube videos that kind of walk through how to do that. Jesse and others, if a tutorial on how I use OBS would be helpful, reach out to me on LinkedIn or something, let me know. I'm happy to put together a video and provide my templates of what I do for that. What I like about OBS is there are certain follow-up demos that are going to have a very short shelf life, meaning they may be bespoke for a person. I don't really want to edit all of that. I just want to do it in a single take. And OBS allows you to switch between on camera, sharing a screen, coming back, maybe doing a lower third, and you can automate all of that and just do a single take, and it looks really good. But it does take a little bit of setup to do that. So if you're interested in that, let me know. I'm happy to put something together for that.
Cool. So we had one that came in a little bit earlier. I'm not sure if we got to this. How do I look at the camera at the same time look at the content I have on the screen? When I look at the screen, it seems like I'm not engaged with the audience. Any suggestions for making a nice background with minimal investment?
Yeah, I think we did talk about that a little bit, and just really splitting the difference. You're looking into the lens of the camera when you're ready to talk to the audience. And then it's totally fine if you're doing the demo. You don't have to try to look at the camera the whole time. I think that's unrealistic. But just when you're ready to make a point, lifting your eyes back up to the camera would be good.
Okay,
Uh,
we had a question come through. What are best practices for choosing recommendations for bullets that best align to address the customer gap and get maximum traction?
Okay, so if you think about, I would start with what is the intent? What do I want the buyer to do as a result of watching this video? So if you think about what action do I want them to take? What do I want them to understand? How do I want them to respond? If we're really clear on that, that helps me think about, all right, in order for them to take this action, what do I need to say? So there's some context they need to understand to kind of get them in the right frame of mind. And then there's a few things I need to show to prove the capability for them to be willing to mentally cross the bridge, the way we say, to adopt that level of thinking. So that's where I would start. What do I want them to understand? How do I want them to feel at the end of this? What action do I want them to take? And then based on that, what do I think I need to say? And I would say start with the minimum effective dose. That's not do the least possible. It's like, think about, if I had a headache, I could probably take a Vicodin and I'd feel better, but I don't need that. I could probably take a Tylenol and I would also feel better. So I don't have to give everything possible to the audience. You're actually more effective if you say less, but you prioritize that based on the outcome you want them to achieve. And that's where I would start with that. Okay, team, let's move to some final thoughts. So as we kind of conclude our time together here, we really started with this concept of managing our preferences with the audience's preferences. And we may want to overbuild some of these videos and really being conscientious of speed to market, balancing quality and brand with efficiency. And we've got to find that Goldilocks zone. That's a conversation each of you should have inside of your companies to figure out what is the level of quality that we're really looking for these videos as we go through that. Now, I appreciate you hanging with me at this point. I want to give you a little bit of insight into who we are and what we do. Many of you may know us from Demo to Win. Just real quickly, we help people with skills execution across the client lifecycle, anywhere from discovery, client success, executive engagement, storytelling. We have a series of very practical training to help you with that. We're also partnered with Consensus. If you need help with building videos, consulting services around that, we're happy to help you with that. Sammy, I put a link in there to a landing page that talks about the partnership and how we're working together. You can learn more about Consensus there. You can learn more about 2Win at that page as well if you're interested in learning more. And then lastly, if this was helpful to you, you want more free resources, we give away free training all the time. You can scan this QR code. It'll take you to a landing page. You can choose how you want to get it, whether you want to get that emailed to you, you want to get it through social media. And then there's a place there, if you want to go deeper right now and do a free consult, there's a place to do that as well. Would certainly appreciate you engaging with us in our community. And if there's anything we can do to help out, we're here to support you. And I've given you my LinkedIn at the bottom as well. If you want to follow me or reach out to me, if there's anything I can do to help you, I'm more than happy to do that and engage with you. Sammy, with that, I'll turn it back over to you.
Thanks, Chad. Thanks everyone for joining us. If you guys, again, like Chad said, if you have any questions or you want to connect with him on LinkedIn, be sure to do that. He is a great resource for all things demos, pre-sales, buyer enablement, all those good things. So, and the 2Win team is awesome. They, like he said, provides even some free trainings sometimes like this and other things. So just be sure to connect with them on LinkedIn. With that, we are going to go ahead and close the session. Thanks everybody for joining us. We hope to see you all at DemoFest Virtual May 21st and 22nd. Thanks, guys.